father built me a house 5 years ago. It was located at the back of our house where my family is living. It was a present to me after I've made it to college. I didn't have any idea that it was not the dream house that I always wanted, but a house that I will later regret having. So, after graduation, I lived in that house. It was very nice, like I'm living in an exclusive villa in an expensive subdivision. I started to feel that I wasn't alone there. On the first night I slept there, while at deep slumber, my mobile phone alarm rang at exactly 3 a.m. I was still sleepy, so I reached for it with my hands while keeping my eyes closed, but I can't barely touch it. It's not at the place where I usually put it before going to bed. I slowly opened my eyes, and then, to my surprise, I saw a lady in front of my bed, more like a silhouette of it, that is standing in front of me. I closed my eyes again and hid myself under the blanket. I don't scream. I don't know what's up with me, but all I know is I'm not alone in my room, in my own house, in my own ghost house. Several times I experienced an old lady in my bathroom, children playing in my kitchen, a man hiding under the stairs, and a lady in my room. I was always scared, all days of my life. It's like I'm living in hell. My life is consumed by my fears for years. When I realized it, they're not causing me harm. I think they are friendly, and they just don't like me living alone in that house. That's why they come there and decided to stay, so I'm not alone. Day by day, different kinds of sightings happen in that house. Even my friends see them living with me at times. But I think they are not harmful, so I'm not scared anymore. Believe it or not all ghosts you see out there can cause you harm. When I see them, I feel them and I smile at them, though sometimes I'm frightened. These people who are not with us are helping me in some way. The footsteps. Ghosts are definitely not real. Those were my words said before we started our trip up to the mountains of Baguio City. A group of delegates from our grade school department were going to a leadership seminar in one of the most haunted places in the Philippines, Teachers Camp. Plenty of ghost stories come from that dreaded place where we were about to stay for 6 days. It was known for its old age and the rumors that it was built on top of a war-related area. People see ghosts of war veterans and enemy soldiers kidnapping women. I thought I could never experience something like that, but I was wrong. First day of the trip was fun, as I remember. We went biking around the park there and hung out in the hotel room of one of the delegates' parents. I didn't even think about the place we were really supposed to stay, until of course I saw our hall in Teachers Camp. The camp was enormous, plenty of halls we could have stayed in. But of all of the halls we were assigned to White Hall, the oldest and the one in the worst condition. The floor would creak with every step, and because of an opening between the ceiling and wall you could hear anything from chattering teachers to the bags of others dragged on the floor. Our toilets didn't even work well. So every day I dreaded coming back to that hall at night. The long-awaited first night in our room finally came, and as usual I didn't sleep well. I always have difficulty sleeping, whether at home or a creepy camp. Room 109 was our assigned quarters. 4 other girls stayed in the room with me, and they were comfortable with the place, just a bit disgusted at the counterproductive toilet. Anyway, as I was saying, I didn't sleep well at all. I was awake until the hours of 11, desperately trying to sleep. Of course I left the lights on, fearing something might go bump that night. Finally, I fell asleep for around 4 hours and woke up again at 3 a.m. Screw sleep, I thought. Luckily, I brought an interesting book from my sister. I read undisturbed, yet still a bit paranoid for a few minutes. Until I heard something. Footsteps. Faint yet coming closer. I stopped reading and waited if they'd actually get louder. They did. Before anything got any louder, I actually peeked outside of my room, finding nothing, but the footsteps kept coming. stronger and closer as it headed down from the stairs across the room. I went back to my bed and just stayed there, sitting upright, my ears eagerly taking in the footsteps. I was nervous. I tried to calm myself, saying that there were late guests coming in. But then the footsteps reached the entrance of the room, so roughly that I felt the bed move whenever it sounded. I freaked and hid my head under the blanket, hurriedly reciting my prayers, while my friends slept soundly. I feared I'd see something that I'd remember for the rest of my life. The footsteps felt as if it was coming towards my bed. Then it stopped. I lifted enough courage to look up from my blanket. I saw a white shady figure with a somewhat bloodied face. It was only for a few seconds, until I finally got the urge to hide myself from it. I hid under the blanket again. The footsteps ensued, but this time grew fainter and fainter until it was gone, like the figure. I was so scared I could barely get sleep. For the passing days, in room 109, nothing else happened. I told my friends about this ghostly experience, and they laughed about it. I know what I saw, whether it was a ghost or just my mind playing paranoid tricks on me. I still go to teacher's camp, and I still hear stories of the hauntings, even ones similar to mine, but hearing or reading ghost stories can never amount to the thrill of experiencing one. White entity. This is one story that still haunts me until this day. I am the type of person who does not believe in ghosts but have learned to respect their reasons for being on our plane. I belong to a group of friends who were really into the paranormal things that are happening around us. Being in this type of crowd, I could not help myself in believing as well, with the way they tell their stories, and being dragged into opening my sixth sense. Call it peer pressure, but I guess that's just the way it is. For a few days, nothing out of the extraordinary was happening. So, I told myself, hey, maybe it didn't work. Given the fact that I did not believe in those type of beings, I thought perhaps the ceremony had no effect on me. Then it happened. One night I woke up in the middle of the night and wanted a glass of water. I was so thirsty that it could not wait until morning. So, I went down for a cold drink. After filling my glass with water from the container, I closed the fridge's door. Standing beside me was a white figure with bloody red eyes. I was so scared that I dropped the glass on my hand and closed my eyes and prayed. When I opened my eyes, there was no one there, so I figured it was just my imagination. So, to help me sleep, I had this great idea of watching TV to help me doze off. So, I got the remote and pointed to the direction of the television. Now, before I could even turn the TV on, I saw on the black screen that the white figure was standing behind me with a big grin on her face, this time together with her bloody eyes. This was the last straw. I ran up to my mom's room and slept beside her until morning came. The next day, I asked the group to take their so-called gift from me because I could not take it anymore and that I never wanted to see the white figure again. Jeepney ride. It's funny when certain events in our lives occur and we blame it all to bad luck. What's funnier is the things that we do to counter the flow of bad energy that causes these so-called bad luck or bad events. At least at that time I thought it was funny, until my friend shared her unlikely experience. This story is about my friend and her scary jeepney ride going home. For those of you who don't know what jeepneys are, they are a popular means of public transportation in the Philippines. They were originally made from US military jeeps left over from World War II and are well known for their flamboyant decoration and crowded seating. My friend went home late after finishing their school project. Now, since she lives within the vicinity of the UP Diliman campus, University of the Philippines, it was perfectly safe for her to take the jeepney instead of taking a taxi in going home during late hours. It was about midnight when she took the ride home, and she could not help but notice the driver kept glancing at her through his rear-view mirror, and then he would turn to her. Now all jeepneys have their own route and do not take any turns, and they have to stick to their route or else there is a big chance that they would run into some cop trouble. What's odd about this jeepney ride, besides the eerie glances that the driver gave from time to time, he was also taking turns in corners that he was not supposed to. Afraid of what the driver's plans are, she was even more afraid of her surroundings because it seemed as if she was in the middle of nowhere already. So instead of going down, she just stayed on the jeep. On the last turn that the driver made, she noticed that they were back on the route that they were supposed to be in the first place. Before reaching the end of the terminal, the driver turned to my friend and said, "I'm sorry if I scared you or startled you. It was not my intention. Could you do me a favor and burn all your clothes when you get home?" Wondering why, my friend asked why he was acting very strange. The driver explained, "The reason why I kept glancing was because your head was not attached to your body when I looked through my rear view mirror. That is why I changed my route a while ago, hoping we could get away from the bad energy present in that area, and that's why I want you to burn your clothes when you get home because I think it's still with you." Upon arriving home, still shaking from fear, my friend took all her clothes off and burned them as quickly as she could. A few days later, she found out on the news that the jeepney driver died a day after the incident. It turned out the warning was not for her but for the driver. The crippled. Ever wondered how things came to the way they are? Why some places give us this eerie feeling when we pass through it? Why we meet people who give us this uncomfortable feeling even if they are not doing anything? Ever picked up money on the street or on a sidewalk? Lucky huh? But did you ever wonder who it belonged to and why it was lying there in the first place? History was never my thing. For me, everything and anything bad from the past should be left there and should be forgotten through time. But what if you had a thing or an object that links you to an event that has happened in the past? Would you let it go, or would you be thankful that you have it? This story took place on my grandmother's house, where I had my summer vacation. I love spending time there because there is a lot that a person can do inside and outside of her house. She has a big pool, a big flat-screen TV, tennis and basketball court, and all the amenities you could think of that is or should be found in your modern home. That is why the 1980s looking cabinet she had on the living room seemed a bit off or out of place. So, I asked my grandmother where she got the cabinet and if it was new. She made a joke about it and told me, "It's from the 80s, dear, I doubt that is new." With a smile on her face, she told me that she just passed by an antique shop 2 weeks ago when the cabinet caught her eyes. She thought it was pretty, so she bought it. I was having the time of my life, and everything was great. I had 2 weeks vacation time, and I was only on my third day. Everything was okay except for the loud thuds that kept me awake at night. I did not pay much attention to it though, because when I asked what that was, it turned out that some men were working on some renovations to the house next door. They were on a tight schedule, so some of the men worked even at night. And even though the sound seemed different, I just took their word for it. I didn't want to ruin my time with thinking there were ghosts in the house. One evening I was watching a late-night movie when I heard the loud thuds again. This time it seemed as if they were coming inside the house. I was worried, thinking it might be someone trying to break in, so I followed the sound to have a look. The sound seemed to be coming from the living room. The weird thing was, as I got closer to the sound, I could hear some screeching and scratching sounds after the thuds. What I saw next was the most horrifying thing I have ever seen. No amount of scary movies or Hollywood effects could have prepared me for what I saw that night. It was an old lady soaked with blood. I thought the loud thuds were footsteps, but it turned out those were her hands banging on the floor. The scratching sounds were from her long nails as she dragged herself across the room. She was crippled and couldn't walk. It also seemed as if some of her bones were out of place because some of her body parts were deformed. She was crying out for help, had no eyes, and only had a blue eerie light that seemed to be coming from the back of her head that lit her eye sockets. I ran to the maid's quarters given the fact that it was closer than where my grandmother's room was located. I woke everyone up and told them what I saw. When we came back, the floor was spotless clean and nothing was there. Next day, I convinced my grandmother of returning the old cabinet to the store. Upon returning the cabinet, my grandmother asked who the previous owner was. It turned out that an old woman used to own the cabinet. One day, she just disappeared. Some say she went back to the States without anyone knowing, some say she was brutally murdered, some say she was beaten to death and was stashed somewhere. But no one actually knows what became of her, no evidence was located, and no body was found as well, said the vendor. Neither my grandmother nor I said a word. We were speechless and couldn't figure out what to do. We just left the cabinet there and went home. The weird thing about the story of the old lady was that no one even bothered to investigate on her case to know the truth. Her family just tried to make some money out of her belongings and that was it. But the weirdest part of all is the people who hear this story sometimes claim that they see the old woman every now and then, asking for help, crying out, curled up inside their own cabinets. Freaky.